Animal communication is real. Here are 2 ways to communicate with your dog and pets. Spoiler, you can actually learn one of these methods from me and you can do it yourself. The first way is through an animal communicator. And I know what you're thinking. Is this real? Let me prove it. Then I'll cover how you can do it yourself. I had fascinating conversations with 2 animal communicators and also with some people who used animal communicators to talk to their pets or horses. I want to share some of their mind-blowing stories.
I can remember a story about a little dog. I had a neighbor that their dog went missing. I connected with the dog, and the dog showed me that it was in a very dark place. They couldn't really see any light, so it was very scared. It looked, from what I could see in the dim lighting, like it was under a deck. There was boards that were running over its head. It was crouched in a corner. And so I said to my friend, it's under a deck or something. So we all start looking under decks. A day later, she went down to her cold cellar in her basement, and it had a bunch of wooden shelves, and the dog was in there in the corner under these wooden shelves. So it was very dark. And the dog had followed her in when she went to get something the day before. She closed the door and, didn't think to check there, and that's where the dog was.
I had a friend who used an animal communicator for her horse, and she really believed in it. And I'm like, I was skeptical, but I decided I would try that with my horse because I was having some forward motion problems with her. We'd get out on the trail and she wouldn't want to go forward. I mean, she's 20. She normally rides. I called the animal communicator. She tapped into my horse and she said, Roxy's my horse. She doesn't like the new saddle pad. And I thought, now how did that woman know I had a new saddle pad? It wasn't on Facebook. It wasn't anywhere, right? And she said my horse wanted to know why I got her a new saddle pad. And I said, well, because it was her birthday. I put the old saddle pad on her. We went out riding and she did fine. I put the new saddle pad on her. We went riding and she wouldn't go forward. I switched saddle pads and she moved forward. So anyways, I sold the saddle pad and I haven't had a problem with that horse moving forward ever again. The woman that I use, we do it by telephone. There's no Zoom, we're not looking at each other. She's not seeing the animals. But I had Roxy, the horse, tied up to the horse trailer, saddled. We're going to go riding after I was done with my animal communicator meeting. And she says to me, Roxy wants to know what she's waiting for by the trailer. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way she would have known that horse was sitting there. And she was pawing. She was getting impatient, waiting.
So Solomon and Lucy, my dog, had a very unusual friendship where you would think that they hated each other because they were always they played rough, let's put it that way. So Lucy had to be put to sleep. She had cancer, and I did it right before I went to Peru because I thought that'll be easier for me to get over it, and not thinking that Solomon was going to be losing both of us at the same time. I don't know. I didn't think he was going to take it that hard, but when I got back, he was losing weight, and I asked my husband what was going on. He's like, yeah, he hasn't been, eating that well. And so then it was like as soon as Solomon saw me, he just let it. He was inconsolable. Like he would have these fits where his eyes would just ring in white, and he would spin, and then he'd fall down and thrash. And he was having these fits. He popped an abscess. He tied up. He tied up so bad. I didn't know what was going on. It was such bizarre behavior. And so my other horse, Ned, he's a Mustang, and he was annoyed at Solomon for acting like this because, he'd always looked up to him. Well, one day they were out I had let him out and during the day, and he was standing in the brush chomping his teeth. Solomon, the horse that with the grief, and Ned was just like pinning his ears and all annoyed at him. And I just talked to Ned. I just said it out loud. Like sometimes I do it inside my head, but this time I don't know why. I just said it out loud. And I said, Ned, do you remember when you got rounded up, how heartbroken you were? You lost your mom, you lost your family. And that's how Solomon feels right now about Lucy. And so he went over there and he just started licking Solomon. like I sat on the ground and watched it for like 20 minutes. He just licked him, like all the way down his neck, all the way down his shoulder, down his leg. Solomon's ears perked up, like he was finally feeling loved, that Ned wasn't being mean to him. And so I think that was part of the beginning of his recovery. All this time, because he wasn't eating and drinking, he was peeing brown. So after Ned did the licking thing, he finally, really started to come around. Finally, he got all the way back to health.
Is living at a barn, had a very large pen for a busy, big barn. And he was never quite settled in that pen, and he was always stressed. He always had ulcer symptoms. And it's like, I know you tend to lend yourself to being a little more anxious, but this is getting a little ridiculous. And she's going, I really think there's maybe some kind of wild animal maybe moving behind his pen that's freaking him out. And I'm like, well, maybe if it was a big cat like a cougar, sure. And they are in the area where he lives, but I'm like, it's all the time. And it's not like there's something moving behind him all the time. At least that would be a big predator type animal that would cause him to be like that. So I finally was going in going, what's the issue with this pen? What's the problem? Turns out there was a family of raccoons. Didn't like the raccoons. I got a picture of raccoons, and she ended up putting up a camera, and sure enough, it was a family of raccoons. She moved him to the other side of the property into another equally big pen. He's never had an issue since.
My recent video shows 4 different ways you can communicate with horses. Go watch it after this one. But what exactly is animal communication? How do they do it? We chatted with Laura and Catherine, they're animal communicators, and this is their explanation.
I do it slightly differently, where I'm asking the animal to kind of guide me to where they're feeling discomfort in their body and kind of share that with me. So I normally feel it in my body. Everybody receives information differently. There's no right or wrong with it, but I normally feel it in my body, and that's how I can describe it and get a pain score and stuff for it as far as like how I'm feeling the discomfort. True animal communication uses telepathy, where you're asking a question and you're getting an answer. So it's a little bit different in that regard, where you are asking very open-ended questions. You don't ever want to be led in a direction. You don't ever want to go there with an assumption and get an answer. And so this is actually the way all animals communicate, is with telepathy. Because the information can be received from anywhere. Like, you don't have to even be in the same room or on the same continent with them. I mean, you can connect with them anywhere.
As I can recall, most of my communication with animals is through an image, a picture. It's not a voice, it's a picture. So, and it's up to me to interpret it. And I may play with that and send back a picture. Is this what you mean? And they'll come back with the original picture. Yeah, there's a feeling that you get, like, yeah, that's it. That's it. You got it. So it's image and intuition feeling. I take pictures of the horse that I work on for bodywork. Like, I'll do before and after pictures, but as far as the communication piece, no, because I don't usually do it when I'm standing with the animal. I do it by distance. So I get the client to send me a picture of the animal, particularly the eyes. I can go in real quick when I see eyes.
One time I got in trouble for not knowing the difference between animal communicators and animal psychics. I thought they were the same thing. It turns out animal communicators talk to animals that are alive right now. Animal psychics communicate with animals who have passed away. Today we are only talking about animal communicators. Animal communicators exist. They have a gift, and it's easy for them to understand pets and any other animal by reading their mind. But what if I tell you can learn to understand them too, and not precisely with a telepathic gift? The second way to communicate with animals is through TBT, which I developed in 2000. I've since taught this to hundreds of students worldwide, and they use it to communicate with and heal their animals. Let me share a couple animal communication stories that happened to me, and then I'll share how TBT communication works. The first experience I had for me with animal communication was a long time ago. I was driving up a driveway to see a horse that was lame, And all of a sudden, a thought filled my mind that the horse's leg was broken. And I thought, that's crazy. Why would I think the horse's leg is broken? It turned out the horse's leg was broken. I couldn't really believe it, and I couldn't process that information. I didn't know what to do with that, because that's crazy, right? But fast forward, I've heard so many stories. One time, these people I know, their horse, they had moved their horse. Had the horse for years, it was fine. They moved the horse. For 2 months, it's barely eating. They had several traditional veterinarians out. They tried different foods. They did blood tests. They tried antibiotics, all this stuff. He just picked at his food and was losing weight. He'd already lost over 150 pounds in 2 months after this move. Finally, they called an animal communicator, and they're telling me the story. And they're thinking this is crazy, but this was what happened. The animal communicator, all they said was, your horse misses an orange cat. All I see in my mind is an orange cat, and he won't say anything else. The owners were dumbfounded. They had left an orange barn cat. It wasn't really their cat. So they left the cat there, but they went back and they said, listen, our horse is not eating because of this cat. And the barn owners didn't mind giving away the cat. So they brought the little orange cat back and brought him to the horse, and the horse was sniffing the cat all over and then started eating. Gained all his weight back again. So that was crazy, but it opened my mind to this possibility, as you're hearing about. So those are just a couple stories where there was very specific animal communication. There was just no way for me to know or for the animal communicator to know what was going on unless we were literally getting information from the horse. So that opened my mind, and eventually I did develop TBT, an entire energy technique. And with that, you can use it to communicate with horses. TBT combines veterinary medicine with holistic horse practices so that you can fix any horse issue and fix it at its root so that it's gone forever. TBT is energy-based and uses primarily yes and no answers. This means you don't have to read the horse's mind for TBT. You just sit in your energy field combined with the horse's energy field. And we know all energy is positive or negative, just like a battery. So we ask a yes or no question, and if we feel a positive energy, it's a yes. We feel a negative energy, that's a no. It's pretty straightforward. Anyone can learn TBT in my online university. This is so valuable for anyone who has pets and anyone who works with animals, because traditional medicine is good for specific things, and it's really good for helping with symptoms. It's like traditional medicine just puts a band-aid on the symptoms. With TBT, we use this animal communication, yes and no answers, to ask what's the root cause. We track things down. We find out what's really causing the problem, and we get rid of that. Therefore, it completely fixes problems and gets rid of them forever. If you want to hear more from my students about the results of this program, please watch this video. These are some stories from Serena, one of my students, who communicates with horses and dogs using TBT.
Collie, like Lassie, long hair, he's older. He's been having a lot of mobility issues due to his age and his size. And as I'm working on him, I'm going, where do you hurt the most? Like, where are the issues? And so when I was working on him, I said, hey, can you show me where you're hurting the most that's causing like some of these mobility issues? And right away, he's like going, it's right. And it's not necessarily his hips, but he's going like this area in my hind end, my stifles, my hock, and I'm being shown this picture, and that energy is moving to that area, and he's going, it's right here. But from there I can go, okay, like, well, what's in here? And he was able to take me energetically, and through communication was able to take me to those areas, and then I could energetically work on them to get them physically better. But then I've got a dog most recently, he's a big mastiff. He has early onset heart failure. And you could tell where I'm like, okay, like, where can I help you the most? I start working on him where he needs the most, which most obviously I'm there for his heart. That's where I'm going to get taken. Her first session with him, it was an appetite issue. She could not get him to eat. He was so uncomfortable. I said, okay, well, what do you like to eat? And I was able to ask, because she's like, I'm trying all these different things, because sometimes he'll like something, then he changes his mind, and I don't know why. So I could go and go, hey, why do you like this food, or why do you not like this food? Do you like the chicken? Do you like the steak? What's causing the difference? And he was able to show me pictures of how he feels before and after eating these different foods. And so I was able to work on that. I was able to work on those systems. I could let his owner know, hey, like, he's shown me that these foods are going to work best for him. He's had great appetite since that session, has had no issues with eating. For me, before becoming a TBT practitioner, I would have defined animal communication as somebody who is able to communicate with an animal and gather stories. Whenever I've had involvement with animal communicators, it's usually, what's my animal's past? Is there anything they want to share with me? To me, it's always been, like I said, more of that storytelling feature. And so when I started doing TBT, I would tell most of my clients, I'm not an animal communicator. I work with the physical energy. Yes, I can get yes and no from, muscle testing and going, what is wrong here? Yes or no. But it was actually a client who ended up becoming a master practitioner through TBT who was like, no, you're definitely communicating with animals. Maybe not in the way you have traditionally defined animal communication, but you're definitely communicating with them. And after reevaluating it, I would definitely agree with her, because a lot of what I do, especially now as owners and clients are looking for answers with their animals, I'll get, do they like the supplement that I'm giving them? Is it doing them any good? Would they prefer something else? How do they feel about, the pen they're in or the pasture they're in? Or how do they feel about, a pasture mate? And those are all questions that I can ask and get answers from.
With the Tucker Biokinetic technique, you can communicate with any horse, dog, cat, any animal you have a connection to. Go to the link in the description if you'd like to learn more about it, and feel free to email me if you have any questions about the program. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.